My name is Blake Larsen, and I own Larsen Structural Design in Fort Collins, Colorado.
This week on the Structural Engineering Podcast, Zach and I talk with Blake Larsen. You probably don't know Blake or his company, but he's been on our list to get on the show since day one, and we're really excited to get to talk with him. So, why should you care about this? To me, Blake has done something that a lot of us daydream of, some people try, and few do very well. That's start their own engineering company and build it up to be a success. If you've ever had thoughts of starting your own firm, I think you'll enjoy our talk with Blake. He also has great opinions on what makes for good firms and good engineers. So without further ado, here's Blake. We're really excited to have you on the show. We have you on because you started Larsen Structural Design, as many people would have guessed, and you've been going since '05. For people that don't know the company, it's in the region. It's very successful. You do really cool projects, and you're, it's a company you started. It's fairly small still, and I think that's very impressive. A lot of people right now might be thinking, whether it's right now or just in the future, what would it be like to start their own business? And that's why we have you here. So let's get into the questions. Zach, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, absolutely. So why did you decide to start your own business?
Well, that's a really actually interesting question because I actually started my own construction business before I started my own engineering business. So I graduated college in '99 and I actually started my first business in 2001. And that was kind of in the whole upward swing of the economy. People were building things like crazy. And so I actually started a construction company in 2001 while I worked for an engineering company. So I've always done construction work in the summers and all that sort of thing, and kind of really enjoy the construction side of things, and knew I was going to school for engineering and wanted to do engineering. But so when I kind of had an opportunity in 2001 to do construction, that's what I did. So I was still working full time for a large firm in Fort Collins, and then also building homes on the side. So that's kind of how I first started. And then actually the big catalyst was the firm I was working at. My boss actually passed away. And so he was a big mentor for me. It was interesting because he actually used to be in construction as well. And he had his own construction company. He started in engineering, quit engineering to do construction, came back out of construction to do engineering. And he was a big mentor for me. And so that kind of got me excited even more into construction. And so he knew I started my own business on the side. So I'd work, 50, 60 hours a week as a young engineer and then build houses at the same time. So that started in 2001 in the upswing, and, kind of through some cash that we scrounged together to build our first house, made some money, built another one, kept going that way. And then he passed away, which was kind of, it was a shock. He was 47 and passed away. So but a couple of years older than me right now. So that was a big kind of turning point. I was too young and stupid to know it was a big epiphany at the time. And so it's not like I thought, oh, life is short, I should start my own business. It was more of a, boy, he's not here anymore. That's kind of, lost a little bit of that with, how much I was learning with him, and was just excited to, start my own thing, and did that, 4 years after I started construction. So it made it easier, I guess, to branch out on my own. And in 2005, I finally just bit the bullet and said, hey, I'm going to take off, and I'm going to do both construction and engineering. So I had two separate businesses, and kind of did those together. And then really a few years later, where I realized I can't do both, it was just too hard, and decided to pick what I went to school for, and picked engineering. So,
wow. That sounds like a huge undertaking. Was your family in construction early? Like, how did you even have the understanding to get your foot in there?
So my dad was an architect, actually. So he actually owned his own business, worked out of the house for a number of years. Then, had a business with employees and all that sort of thing. So he kind of had his own thing. So that was just kind of in the back of my head, but not anything that I thought of when I was a kid of, I want to do this when I'm older. It just kind of worked out that way, I guess, So, but no construction. I just kind of worked through construction all through college. I really enjoyed it. And I worked as a surveyor. I poured concrete. I did lots of different jobs, odd jobs. I was a framer for a while, and I just enjoyed that side of things. And so when I started my own construction company, I was a general contractor, which was really exciting. So I kind of learned how to do it, and then got good at it, and then decided to do both. But there is times I do miss building, because building's a ton of fun. But I don't miss the times where I'd show up to a job site and my framing foreman was thrown in jail the night before, and I got to keep going. So there's parts of construction that I don't miss, but I really do enjoy it. But I also think that that's what makes me a better engineer too.
Yeah.
It's I can build things, and I think that's kind of my niche a little bit that way. Is I get it. I can design things that are easier to build. I get what they're doing in the field. I understand what it takes to when I put something on the drawings, or I put that weld symbol on, or I do whatever, I know what it takes for the guy in the field to do that. I know if it really absolutely sucks, or if I know, if it's something he can pull off, but it's just difficult, and it's just something we need to have happen. So I think that actually really helps for my business.
How old were you when you were doing all this in 05, I guess?
In 05, I was 28.
Wow, I'm slacking.
You got to catch up, Max.
Mostly, I was young and dumb. When I did it, I had a newborn baby. She was a year and a half, and a new house, and I had a mortgage I couldn't afford. So I came up one day, and I actually just got a promotion to run our office, our local office, and I kind of turned to my wife and I said, you know what? I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to quit and do it on my own. And honestly, I was so young and stupid. She just kind of looked at me and said, all right, that sounds good. There was nothing figured out ahead of time. I just was too young and naive to realize how hard it was going to be, and just, jumped both feet, and we decided it in about 5 minutes and never looked back. If I was 43 like I am now, I don't think I would have made the same decision. There's too many things that are up in the air right now with kids, and especially during the whole coronavirus thing here, there's just too many things going on where I probably wouldn't have done the same thing. But back then I was young and dumb, and it seemed like a great idea.
Yeah, helps to be a little naive at the time or something, or optimistic or whatever it was. But
naive is probably. I mean, I was optimistic.
Yeah.
But I didn't really think about all the bad things that could happen from it, But nowadays, I think that would maybe consume me a little bit more. But back then, I had tons of confidence. I was really, really good at what I did. I thought I was a really good engineer, and so I was like, I could totally do this. I think I could put my talents to use, and I think I could be successful, and so that's what I did.
Okay, so you started in 2005 with the engineering. What was it like the first few months starting that? And what was the big goal in the beginning?
It wasn't really a big goal. I'll start there. It wasn't like I'm going to start my business and be the most successful firm ever. It was more of hey, I can do this on my own. I can be successful at it. I can be good at it. We'll see where it takes me. And I was just kind of happy to be working on my own, thinking I have all this free time, doing all this stuff by myself, which was the exact opposite, really. And the first few months were just a lot of work, but I was young, so I could do it. I wasn't burnt out at all or anything like that. I had tons of ambition, and so I mean, I could absolutely put in the long hours, and it didn't affect me at all. It was interesting because I'd have all my other friends from college, and they were talking about their trips to Asia and to Europe and all this sort of stuff, and I worked 80 to 100 hours a week on 2 jobs, and I was happy. I wasn't going to the bars and everything and meeting them. I was working, and I was working a lot. And then I'd had a little newborn at the same time. So it was hard, but I think I did it when I was young enough where I was kind of dumb. I didn't quite understand what life was yet, So I jumped in and I just worked a ton, and that was just kind of my normal, really.
In those first jobs, how were you bringing in clients?
So I had one client, and he was a friend. He's just an architect that worked for a local company. And so he and I were good friends. And so he was my one engineering client, and I was like, hey, kind of one of those sorts of things. And so I was able to get his work, which wasn't a lot, but then I also had a bunch of construction work already because I had that business going. Mm-hmm. So I was actually developing a set of townhomes. So I was doing the full townhome development, start to finish, putting in the infrastructure, roads, all that sort of stuff, and then building a bunch of townhomes on top of it and then selling them. So I had that big project going. So that was helpful. So I knew that'd be an anchor. I knew that'd be something I'd be doing. And I had one client. So I didn't have a no compete at my other company, but at the same time, I didn't ever solicit any of those clients. I didn't want to. I thought that was kind of stealing because I don't know. I still felt loyal to them even though I didn't work for them anymore.
Man, I feel like there'd be such a temptation, or like I don't know how people do it. I guess I would just assume you have to grab some clients or something. I mean, it's not the right thing to do, but to start from scratch that sounds very difficult.
It was, but like I said, the construction was the thing that really helped, because that was actually stuff that I was doing myself. So it was, and once again, I was too dumb to know because it was personally financed, but the economy was roaring at the time too. So I felt good about it. I felt like I could make some money at it. And I knew I had a couple of years at least, and, we'll see what would happen from there. But, I knew I could do it for a year or two, and it turned out to keep going for me. And I guess maybe I got lucky.
Do you think at all like, all right, if this doesn't work, I can go back to that company? Did you have like a backup plan, or was it just, we'll just go and see what happens and worry about it later?
Yeah, no, I was too stupid. I didn't have a backup plan. My wife she had a job, So, but like I said, I had a newborn and a big mortgage, quite honestly, at the time. And for how young I was, it was pretty good sized mortgage. So you think I would have had a backup plan? I would today. But when I was in my 20s, I just went for it. So it worked out,
I bet that it was almost beneficial for everything, the business, that you had a big mortgage, you had a whole bunch of things you had to do, so you were driven to succeed.
I think I was just driven to work a lot,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't mind working. I don't mind putting in the extra hours and that sort of thing. So that obviously helped a lot. But yeah, no, I mean, I had a very supportive family, we'll put it that way, because it does take a lot of hours, and especially engineering and construction at the same time are really opposites, so I'm getting phone calls at 6 a.m. and, as things get started, and then, I mean, they'll go, us engineers, we seem to roll into the office a little late and stay a little late. So it was a longer day, that's for sure.
You're saying you did a lot of construction, framing, concrete, and you're a better engineer due to those things. Is that something you look for when you're hiring new employees?
Absolutely. Actually, let me put it this way. I don't look for a 4.0. In fact, I frown upon a 4.0, to be honest with you. I don't look for a master's degree. That's not as important. I don't have a master's degree myself. I thought about getting a master's degree, and I thought, no, I'd rather work than work in school. And so I forewent that. And I mean, nowadays, I think it's kind of a conclusion that you have to get a master's degree. But I really don't think it makes anybody smarter, to be honest with you. I think working in construction makes you way smarter than a couple extra classes will be. Because you guys know how it is. When you start in practice, you don't know anything. I mean, you really know nothing. So you learn so much at your job and very little in school. Yep. So I think a master's degree isn't the best. So I think I look for construction experience, number one. I look for drawing experience. When I first started, I made sure I was into CAD, and all my internships, well, not all of them, but, started off with the surveying, did a whole bunch of CAD, got really good at CAD. I interned for 2 different structural engineering firms and did a whole bunch of CAD work. And so I looked for that. Nowadays it's Revit, but I look for somebody with Revit experience, somebody with construction experience, somebody that can talk to other people. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't look at a 4.0. In fact, it turns me off and makes me question whether or not they're going to be calculating a beam to the 1000th place versus paying attention to what that beam's actually doing. So,
yeah,
it's music to my ears. We've had people will write in and ask some stuff about if they don't get an internship, what to do. And we've had a couple episodes on this sort of thing as well. And it's always like, if you don't find the job that you want, go do construction always while you're in school or even after. And then, we had a thing on the master's. Is it worth it? I worked beforehand and then I got it and then I worked after. And I don't know if it's, you know some different things, and I'm glad I did it, but I don't know that it made me a better engineer. I think it gives you maybe some depth if you do it after the fact. But if you just go with no construction experience through undergrad into masters, you end up that person that just keeps tinkering with what's the fixity of this beam? Can I put a spring on the end? So you go too far.
You go too exactly. You make it
too place somewhere, but not always in real structural engineering.
You learn in construction to make it as simple as possible. I mean, when you work in it, it needs to be as simple as possible. Us as engineers nowadays, we try to detail so many different things and put so many different, I'll cut this section here and that section there, and we'll do it. It's like, whoa. You got to slow this thing down, man. You got to make these the same somehow, because it's really hard for those guys out in the field. We complain a lot, I think, almost too much as engineers. But how do they miss that? It's like, well, my drawing set was 24 pages long, and I'm just the structural engineer. So they're going to miss stuff. There's drawings are only getting more complicated. So you got to make it as simple as possible. So having that experience in the construction industry and understanding how hard it is, and not being so mad if somebody misses something or this or that, that gives you a good perspective for sure.
Yeah. We followed up a little bit later here with what Blake thinks makes a great engineer.
What makes a good engineer, quite honestly, is, you really need to, the 4.0 isn't important. You want to find somebody that understands the big picture, if that makes any sense. It's not just a bigger picture of engineering and what you're doing, but the bigger picture on a project. So, I think some people get tied into it. Why would they design it this way? It's going to cost them more in steel and this and that. And it's like, well, that may be the case, but think of it on a bigger picture. That's going to save them more, on mechanical ductwork, and they don't have to run something here or there. You got to see it as a big picture. And I think you have to make sure that you understand that everybody has a different goal on the project, and your goal isn't the same as everybody else's goal. We all have the end goal of a good project that's under budget, and it's great for the end user, but everybody has a different agenda, and they're all tied together. And I don't want to make that sound negative, but you do have to understand that. So when you talk to a mechanical engineer on the phone and don't understand why he doesn't get what you're saying, you got to understand they've got a different perspective that they're looking at things, and that's good. Everybody needs a different perspective, but I think us as engineers need to see that too. But the other really important thing too, I think, that an engineer needs to do is he needs to be able to see a building in 3D. So see the full picture in 3D. And I know it's really easy nowadays because we have Revit, but back in the day, we had to just, look at that 2D set of drawings and understand how it all goes together in our brain. And I think that's still important. When I'm driving down the road and I get a phone call from a contractor and he just jumps straight into a question on a project, and I don't even know what he's talking about, start saying these things, you got to be able to take a step back, remember that project, remember that framing, see it in your head in 3 dimensions, and really understand what he's asking you, and be able to give an intelligent answer. And I think that's something that a lot of people rely a little too heavily on the computer for, and really need to be able to have that understanding in their head, not just in Revit.
Yeah, that's my favorite when the call starts with, I'm on sheet 611, detail 10. What did you mean? And you're like, wow.
You're like, what
who are you?
I don't remember. Yeah, exactly.
So how do you know when you're hiring someone now? It's kind of the other side of the coin, but how do you know someone has this ability, can see in 3D of the structure and understand how it goes together? How do you read that in a person?
References.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And if they work construction, because they see it from a different perspective. If you don't go through construction, you only see it on paper, and you don't understand that there's a guy on a ladder putting that up, or someone on a forklift trying to figure out how they're going to lift that thing up, or a guy on a crane trying to put this thing together.
Yeah.
Or the guy delivering it to the job site. How are they going to put it on a truck and deliver it to the job site? If you don't ever work construction, you just don't get it, I don't think. So construction is really important. So there's just so many intangibles by working that job, and I think that's incredibly important. So, whether it's residential construction or commercial construction, either one is, I think, really, really important.
Yeah. We did an episode that's not out yet, but we talked with the contractor, and he had people calling in basically to ask us questions. And the one big takeaway that I had on this, he was saying, get rid of ladder time. Like, don't put anything that I can't do from the inside of the building. And, just a constructability thing is, if you have to put a strap over, go for it, but keep it as minimal as possible, because getting on a ladder is dangerous. It's time consuming. Just these constructability things that I don't have the experience to know right off the bat, even having done a little bit of construction.
Yeah. Have you ever stood on a 10-12 roof, 3 stories off the ground?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Every day it still scares the crap out of you. So you have to understand that, you asking that person to put that strap up there or whatever, that's hard to do.
Yep.
So don't just call it out because you feel better about it. Be intentional with what you do. And if it needs it, it needs it. I'm not saying that, but, don't just belt and suspenders something like that. You're asking somebody else to do a big task, and think a little bit more before you just draw that quick line on the page and say, yeah, put this strap in. I think that'd be a good idea. So, yeah, coming from a construction background, I really enjoy the construction side of things. So I spend a lot more time on a job site and talk to the contractor a lot more. And, I guess maybe I'm a little contractor sympathetic almost to a fault sometimes. So but I think that's important. You gain an ally too.
Yeah.
If you can gain an ally of a contractor who knows that you're not just trying to be a, smarty pants engineer, because they don't think too highly of us,
No.
I mean, some do. There's some team players that get the whole thing, but most as a whole don't think too highly of us. Not as individuals, but just in our profession. So, if you can essentially understand their perspective, once again, it goes to the bigger picture of, understanding the architect's perspective or the MEP designer's perspective. If you can understand the contractor's perspective and talk with them about it, that's really important, And if he knows that you're thinking about it, and if you ask him to do something and then say, I know that's a real absolute pain in the rear, and I wouldn't ask you to do this unless I really needed you to do it, it goes over so well, He knows you're not doing it just to be a jerk or whatnot. He knows that you thought about it and you're asking him to do this for a reason, and it's the right thing to do, and he'll do it. So
you went official in 2005, which is 3 years before we started to head into a recession. As a newly established company at the time, what was your plan as the construction industry started to kind of slow down, or did you see it coming and change the way you did anything?
Well, luckily I wasn't building a spec at the time. I actually just sold a spec home right before it started to crash. So that was good. We got really lucky with that one because it did happen really fast. So when that happened, construction obviously kind of died off. And so that's almost kind of what really pushed me into engineering as well, only out of construction. Although I went back into construction afterwards, and I still dabble today in construction stuff. But it really forced me into engineering. And I mean, I was a small firm. I was one guy working out of my house, so my overhead was pretty low. At that point, I had decent enough contacts. People had come and found me, that sort of thing. And I was able to give an affordable price. If you're an architect going after a project, you're looking at all your consultants as a whole. So you got to stay under a certain threshold to be able to get that job for a client. And I don't want to say I was a bargain engineer, but I was less expensive than people that had a lot more overhead. I was less expensive than I am today because I have a lot more overhead today. I just one guy out of his house. So it made it a little bit easier to get through that. And I actually grew during the downturn. So 2007 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11, 12, they were all increases. So,
wow.
It just more clients, more contacts, but it did come at a sacrifice too. Sacrifice to the family, a lot of hours, a lot of that type of thing. A lot of times staying up till 2, 3 in the morning to finish stuff up because you had the work and you got it done, Mm-hmm. And, but it was definitely hard, took a toll, but, you do what you do to get, to make a life and have a good business. So.
It absolutely blows my mind that you're growing over that time. That is like the best answer ever here. with that growth, when did you start bringing in your first employees?
First employee was 2010. So I've been 5 years in, working on the house for 5 years. And the problem with my first employee is I was too naive to realize I shouldn't be in the house anymore. So that was really, really hard, actually, having an employee come to your house. And it was just different. I lived out of town a ways, so I kind of lived in the country. So he would come, and I'm sure it was pretty awkward for him. And my daughter, who was 7 at the time, would make him sandwiches and things like that. And maybe that was good. Maybe that was really awkward. I'm sure it was probably more awkward, but so that didn't work out so well. I wasn't the best employer working out of my house, so he left, and after he left, I realized that I needed to get out of the house to do this again. And so in really 2011, I got some office space, and then hired another employee, a guy I used to work with back at my previous firm that I only worked with him for a couple months, but hired him, and that actually was a real catalyst for me. Having a brick and mortar shop is pretty important. Makes it a lot more legit when you're going after a school project that you don't work out of your house, right? So, of course, I can design your elementary school from my basement. It's a lot better to have that storefront and have an employee, and still doing the same quality work. It's not like it's any different, but this gives you a little bit more legitimacy to not be working out of your house anymore.
Yeah. How many employees are you up to now?
So there's two full-time engineers, and then I had a drafts person, kind of EIT that was working a little bit, but he's going back to school, and kind of with the whole Corona thing going on right now, it just worked out better for him to do a little bit more of the school and less with me.
From knowing your firm a little bit, it seems like you do have room to grow. Maybe not right this exact month where things are a little funky, but in normal times, you've got a couple very talented engineers, you're established in the region. I get the feeling you go for the sort of quality over quantity route on a lot of these things. Is there a goal to grow larger? Do you have that sort of hope, or you prefer the advantages of a small office?
Yeah, I was never one of those guys that wanted to start a business and just be as big as possible. That never interested me. It interested me to open my own office, but never to be huge. And so no, it's definitely, I'd rather have a quality office and do really good projects and than just have this big office and just churn and burn and get stuff out. That's not what I ever wanted to do. And being in Northern Colorado, it's a real small, close-knit community, quite honestly. You see the same contractors, other consultants, architects all the time. And I really like that. I don't want to go to Denver, or any sort of metro area. That just doesn't interest me to compete with everybody down there. So I would rather just do a really good job for the people up here and keep everybody up here happy. And however much work that ends up being would be how many employees I have. So, right now, 3 of us are taking the work, and right now we're doing some really cool school projects, and that's taking up a lot of our time, and really enjoying that, and we'll see how things keep going, but I think we can handle it really well with the 3 of us. So there's no reason to try to grow crazy and take on work and try to worry about feeding people more than just doing a good job.
That makes a lot of sense. A couple companies I've been associated with, I'm surprised how many times I've heard a number of people in the office as a goal. Like, we would like to have this many employees by this year. It seems like not the way you would want to plan on growing. That is not a target that to me makes a lot of sense.
I just want to do a good job for those clients and have them be happy with it. And honestly, the best part about Northern Colorado is just the relationships you make, and seeing the same people project after project and getting to know them really well and having them all be friends, and that's way more important than trying to see how many projects we can do in a year.
I love that, what he just said. So I think that just makes so much sense.
But this is something that I've kind of thought about is, so when you go from a firm that you've been working at for a while and they have, there's standards in place, there's typical details, your drawings are set up. There's an immense amount of work that goes in the beginning to, build the framework of a company. When you hop out on your own, how do you start with details and drawings? Were you just starting from scratch from the beginning, like everything from zero?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you gotta start it up. I mean, you have some old paper drawing. I mean, back when I had some old paper drawings I took with me, but yeah, you're starting from scratch. And I guess I lied earlier. My first employee was before 2010, but it was he was an intern in the summer, and honestly, he helped me develop my CAD standards back then.
That's a big thing to do. That's a lot of work.
He drew details the whole time, and at that time I had enough projects that I just printed out all the different projects I had done and circled them all up and said, hey, put all these together so I don't have to keep recreating them each time, or remember what job I did them on, or all that sort of stuff. And so yeah, he helped me create those, but yeah, you start from scratch, so which is good too. It's like, oh, that's a lot of work, but you do it the way you think is best as well.
Yeah, and you know them in and out and every way.
Yep. Exactly right. Yep. It's funny, you'd have a different level of critiquing. That office standard detail that you've used probably 87 times on a project, when you draw it your first by yourself, you sit there and go, now, why did we do it that way? I don't think I'd want to do it that way. I'd change this. I'd tweak this little detail that we've used, a million times in the office, and I think it's better if I do it this way. Mm-hmm. So, drawing them yourself and kind of starting from scratch gives you a different perspective too. So I think that's important.
So what were the biggest challenges and maybe some things that were easier than you had expected on starting the engineering firm?
I'll say nothing was easy. There wasn't anything that was easy about starting a business, that's for sure. But I guess for engineering wise, it was hard. There wasn't anybody there at first to bounce ideas off of. I don't know how many times you're working on a project and you walk over to somebody else's desk and to say, how am I going to fit this together? How, this framing I don't really like the way I frame this out. Do you see a different way to do this? Like, as this connection comes in, it's just terrible. I want to do something different. There wasn't somebody to bounce that idea off of. I had to do it myself. So that was probably the hardest part engineering wise. There was lots of challenges actually working on your own. There's no vacation time. So the most I ever took off is like 3, maybe 4 days in a row on a weekend. I take a Friday or a Monday off because there's no one else to answer the phone, right? So I have my cell phone with me, but it was hard. So I had to be available for that. But yeah, challenges. Just sacrifice a lot of family time and personal time. And you got to learn how to handle stress really well, I guess is the big ones. And it's just a lot of hours for sure. And probably with the non-engineering stuff is just you need a really good accountant, a really good attorney. You need a really good insurance agent because there's so many things that you just don't know that you have to do to run a business. I can't imagine people that have to deal with, payroll. Like I have payroll taxes, but taking sales taxes and all that sort of stuff and paying all that. I have so many things that I have to worry about already. You have to hire an accountant to do it. When you start it you start it by yourself and try to take care of it, but it's just too much, So certain things like this year we got over a threshold. I just actually bought an office space for us to be in and not renting anymore. We kind of hit a different threshold and have a little nicer office. And this year I realized I need to pay business personal property tax on stuff that I own already. And my accountant told me this, and I'm like, I have to do what? She's like, well, you have to pay tax on that stuff. And I'm like, well, I already paid tax on it. She's like, I know, but because it's in your office, you have to keep paying tax every year on it. I'm like, well, that's not fair. How am I supposed to know this? And you know this because you have an accountant that tells you so you don't get in trouble. So it's the business side. You really need a really good accountant. And my accountant is a good business manager too, and helps me out in terms of, setting some financial goals and different things like that to make sure we're on task and whatnot. So the business side of things, I think, is one reason why most companies fail. Not because they're not good at what they went to business for, but because they're not good at the business side. So I think I'm good at some business stuff, but the other stuff you need to hire somebody to do it that's good at it.
How quickly when you started did you learn or realize to delegate those things that you just weren't going to be able to do on your own?
Year one. When you get some of these things from the IRS and you're like, what does this even mean? Am I delinquent? I don't know what I did wrong. Like, why are these people yelling at me? Like, what did I do? And you learn pretty fast that you got to hire somebody, and they can help you out and they can walk you through it. And that is definitely the hardest part about it.
Let's see, what year are you at here? 05 to 20. So you've been going 15 years now. What do you think makes for a great engineering company? I think you have a pretty good perspective on this at this point.
Yeah, I think quite honestly, just servicing your clients is number one. Making their life easy. So being honest with them, meeting your deadlines, not complaining about stuff. Being flexible when that architect tells you they want to do something that just sounds crazy. Try to figure out how to make it happen or give them alternatives, way to see their vision happen, but better structurally. Just communicating really well, letting them know you're working on it. All those sorts of things are important to make sure that they have a level of comfort with you and know that they're not going to get an email at 4:59 that says you're not going to make the 5 o'clock deadline that day. And I think just being real simplistic in the way you design things too is important. Trying to not overcomplicate the world is better. So trying to keep things as simple as possible as engineers is really important. I'm looking at some of my kind of leftover ones here of just different things I thought of. And I guess one of those that I'd like to mention is, I kind of did a little bit earlier, but you need a really good supporting family to do it. Because it does take, it's a big stressor on a family. It's a stressor on a marriage. It's not easy to do. And so you need a very supportive family to be able to pull that off. So I need to go thank my wife again after this, because it reminds me of all the turmoil we hit, in certain parts. And sorry, honey, I got to work again. And nope, I can't go do that vacation because I got to work all weekend. And there's lots of those. Like, I'd love to go hiking, but I've got to get this whole deadline done. And I just started yesterday. So there's, you have to have a very supportive family to be able to pull it off. So, and then one other one that I think is really important to be able to own your own business. And we've got a little saying around the house of I'm an extroverted introvert, because my wife is in business and she's a complete extrovert. She just thrives from talking to people all day long, and she just gets on a high from it. And engineers are typically known as introverts. We're looking at our shoes the whole time, talking to somebody, answering these questions, and saying a bunch of complicated terms that somebody's wondering why you mentioned all these sorts of things. Like, I don't really care what the moment of inertia is on there. Just tell me it's stiff. So there's certain words that we could use better, but engineers are known for being introverts. And I think to be able to own your own business, you really need to be an extroverted introvert. And I think that's kind of more of what I do. I do enjoy all the relationships that I've met or they've created, and all the people that I've met. And I really do value those, and I really do enjoy those. This whole thing with Corona is really hard. There's too many Zoom calls and there's too many Teams meetings and things like that. I miss sitting across the conference room table and BSing a little bit before the meeting starts, and just talking to people before you get into the project, and then talking to them when the project's over, or grabbing a beer with them, or whatever the case may be. I definitely miss that. And I think that's an important part of it, because you could be the greatest engineer ever, but if you can't communicate with people and you can't connect with people, you're not going to be successful, and I think that's a really important part of it. And I think coronavirus has made us miss that a little bit more, of how important those connections are. So I can't wait till I actually have a meeting in person again and see all those people. I talk to them all the time, but it's not the same, right? So
Absolutely.
So I think being a little bit of an extrovert is a good thing. So I call it an extroverted introvert. So
that's definitely not something a lot of engineers are comfortable with necessarily. But I mean, you can be an extrovert for a little while. I think it can be a learned skill a little bit. It doesn't have to be what gives you energy, right? You might have to kind of seclude for a little bit, but you can learn to be a little more out there, I guess.
Exactly. My daughter's just like my wife. She just gets on such a high from talking to people, and then when she does it, she's just on a mountain, right? And for me, I'm exhausted when it's all done. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy talking to people, but when I'm done with the day, I'm like, oh, That was awesome. I'm so tired of talking to people, but I enjoyed it the whole time. So I think that's the extroverted introvert. An introvert doesn't like to talk at all, and like that's tough. And I'll do a little bit when I need to, but the extroverted introvert is what you need at least to be able to pull it off. I think in our business. So
yeah. Now, like you said, 15 years, got a lot more experience, probably a lot more lessons learned under your belt. What would you've done differently? Or if you were to talk to someone today that wanted to go do the same thing or something similar to what you did and start their own engineering firm, what would you have done different, or what would you suggest to them?
I don't know. Hindsight's always 20/20. You can nitpick this or that, or I could have done this little thing better. But quite honestly, I'm happy with where I'm at, and where it's gotten to, and so I really wouldn't change it. It was all a journey to get here, and you learned a lot of stuff the whole time, and so yeah, I really have no regrets with where we're at, and happy with where things are. And so, we could have grown quicker than I did and did all these sorts of things, but I don't know if it really would have made anything better. So I like what I'm doing now and what we're doing now in terms of projects, and happy with it. So yeah, wouldn't change anything. No reason to look back and second guess yourself. Just be happy with where you're at. So
I like that.